We extend our heartfelt welcome to all of you for another enlightening session on decarbonizing freight transportation. I warmly welcome and appreciate the presence of our esteemed speakers who will be sharing their insights. Please kindly join the panel. I request our moderator, Ms. Shubhra Jain, Public Policy Manager from Amazon, to kindly commence the discussion. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to be here and lovely to see our colleagues and all the guests here enjoying a cup of coffee. I hope that the session and the panelists that you see assembled here today will be an interesting draw to bring you back to join us and we will get started. Maybe I'll just request everyone to get seated and we'll start in about a minute. Great. So, welcome everyone to this session on sustainable freight transportation. And I'm very excited to be here. I am Shubhra Jain from Amazon, part of our public policy team. And transportation and sustainable transportation is one of the biggest focus areas as we move to transforming our operations and making them more sustainable, moving to a more net zero carbon operations. I'll be the moderator for the session today, and I'm very excited to welcome the esteemed panel of speakers that we have today. And I'll just quickly introduce the speakers that you see with me here. Mr. Pavan Mulukutla is the Director of Integrated Transport, Electric Mobility and Hydrogen at WRI India, one of the leading think tanks working in this area. He has been at the forefront of various policy developments and notably on the National Green Hydrogen Mission announced by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. I also welcome Shweta Ramdas, my colleague from Amazon, who is the sustainability leader at Amazon and drives various sustainability initiatives across renewable energy, building, sustainable transportation, packaging, water stewardship, and circular economy in line with Amazon's climate pledge ambitions. I then welcome Mr. Pramod Kumar, who is the General Manager R&D at Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited. We are all familiar users for HPCL. He is currently stationed at the Green R&D Center in Bangalore, and his areas of interest are in FCC technology, biomass conversion technology, turquoise hydrogen, and crude to chemical. He has more than 25 patents to his credit. We look forward to hearing from him on what innovations are happening in this sector. Mr. Veeraraghavan Shankaran is one of the promoters of Green Jewels and its CEO. Welcome, Mr. Raghavan. He has served in Europe as business head for Cargill, and he has experienced the different types of agro waste being produced by industries, witnessed firsthand the trials and tribulations involved in the disposal, which has led him to his endeavor at Green Jewels and producing valuable biofuels from waste from some industries. And we look forward to hearing more on that. And last but not least, Mr. Sundaresan. He has been an entrepreneur and technology innovator all his life. And he currently is head of new technologies at Ashok Leyland, responsible for identifying technologies that enable zero-emission transport, safety on the roads, and commercial viability. So I'm really excited to to have this discussion and get into the meat of the conversation around how do we look at this sector, which honestly is one of those hard-to-abate sectors. It's very heartening to see that transportation is one of the 7 sectors that has been identified as a priority within the government of India's long-term strategy for low-emission development. There are multiple segments that we need to find solutions for. And today we want to focus on freight and medium and heavy duty vehicle category within the overall transportation sector. And one of the key reasons for that is really, while it may be a very small percentage of absolute number of vehicles that currently exist and ply in this segment, this segment can contribute to almost half of the overall emissions from transportation. So it's a very important and a very critical one to talk about. I also feel that we've made immense progress and therefore have immense learnings from programs and schemes such as those on electric vehicles, the FAME2 scheme, which was focused on two-wheeler EVs and three-wheeler vehicles, a certain segment, but did not include trucking within its scope. And that has been absolutely critical. That program and the vision that the government laid out for everyone has been critical in seeing the development and adoption that we see today in the space of that segment of electric vehicles. And the question is, can we do something similar? What is needed to make a similar transition for freight? I'm going to bring in each of these speakers, but really 2 questions. While electric trucks, and again, there is conversation happening on that, and programs that are being conceptualized for that, will be able to solve and provide solutions for one set of trucking needs, it is very likely that that solution set will be limited in the ability to solve and provide solutions that will work across the entire gamut of operations, which will involve long-distance travel, will involve different use cases. So therefore, what is the role for other technologies and other solutions? Is it hydrogen-based trucking as the solution that we are working towards? Will it be hydrogen ICE? Will it be hydrogen fuel cell? And when are we going to be ready to really get to that? And if we are not at a stage of maturity when we have the infrastructure needed, we have the technology needed, and we have commercially viable solutions and business models available, can we look at other solutions, for example, alternate fuels? And when I say alternate fuels, specifically low carbon alternate fuels. And do we have an understanding of the different solutions? That we have a biofuels policy, we have a focus on ethanol blending, but really, what are those innovations? And in conversations that I've had before the session, there are pockets of innovation happening at individual organizations in their own capacities. What do we need to do to really come together as industry overall? And here you see a really fascinating breadth of the entire supply chain in transport, where you have OEM, you have the oil PSUs, you have users like Amazon, and innovators and R&D providers. So, what can we do as industry, and what can we ask? What can we provide as solutions to government to really make sure that these pockets of innovation are scalable and find the light of day? So with that, I'm going to ask Pavan here from WRI the first question. And really, you are leading a lot of this research innovation in this area. What are the why do we first need these different technologies when we talk of low and zero carbon freight solutions in medium and heavy duty vehicle segment? And really what is happening in this segment and its relevance to overall transportation.
Thank you, Shubhra, and warm good afternoon. That's a lot of questions in one question. Let me see what I can do. I think let's take a step back and think about what are we really trying to achieve, right? And Shubhra, you were mentioning about the need for reducing the emissions. I think two factors kick in. One is, if you look at from a little bit more of the policy angle, what is the emission target that we are talking about that we want to achieve? And what is the contribution of the freight sector to reduce that? And then how do we talk about a technology transition from a supplier side or OEM perspective? Like in terms of, for example, US has set their own GHG emission target compared to 2010, saying that you have to reach by 2027 almost 46% reduction in GHG emissions. So there is an emission target that is being set. Some of them have gone ahead and are being bold, states like California, to state that we want ZETs, zero emission trucks, by 2050. So there are two kinds of goals that we are talking about, and that becomes the starting point of any policy discourse. The emission target, and then specifically, what do I really want the segment itself to transform into? Now, having said that, let's look at the users. You have at one end a market which is so extremely fragmented that almost 70% of the truck owners are small one truck owners or 2 or 5 truck owners. So you have that challenge. Then there is the whole question of the running cost per kilometer. The economics then kick in. And then you have OEMs who are trying to deal with we are talking about 4 dominant technologies, right? Either it is your BEV, or your H2 ICE, or your fuel cell, and then your biofuels slash syngas. So there are these 4 major technologies for any MDV, HDV transport. So I think if we can set targets based on consultative process with all the relevant players, taking into consideration that let's not get into we have a net zero 2070 target that's very clearly been announced globally. But let's look at the sectorial target for transportation to see what does it really take freight segment to transition. See, we always have this double challenge of livelihoods, which we can't really talk. The EBITDA margins are also so low, almost 10 to 12% for freight segment, MDV, HDV. So given all these challenges, constraints, which we say, rather than challenges, constraints, the boundary conditions, we need to think of new mental models and not the linear model, okay, chalo, let's get some incentive and we'll do. We need to think of what business model will actually help transform this industry incrementally, or whatever is the model we are talking about. And what does it take, taking into consideration the OEM's positions, the user's position, shippers, and then logistics service providers. We have all these 4 stakeholders, and of course, government is at the center looking at the whole policy. I think we need an approach like this to think, and then bringing down, okay, this is my emission target, this is my transition, the technology choice, let me leave it to the industry. I don't think we need to, as policy makers, or policy think tank and policy makers really need to start defining the technology. And I don't think the incentives should also be based on that, honestly speaking. The incentives should be really based. And when I talk about incentives, it's not just a direct subsidy model, right? There are multiple business models. It should really think about zero emission truck target that we are talking, and whenever India defines it, whether it is 2040, 50 or 55, 60, I think slowly if we can start laying that roadmap, then it really gives clarity. Because we can't expect OEMs to work on 5 technologies. I mean, many of them are working literally not 2 or 3 at any given time. So how do we then bring this? And policies are there to support, right? I would really say, for example, the National Green Hydrogen Mission, which we were supporting, really talks about pilots. And I think there's almost an allocation of 400 crores for the transport sector, just looking at commercial vehicles for buses and truck segment. So we really need certain dedicated understanding, because clearly today, I don't think, and I would really let other eminent panelists talk about, I don't think we understand the business model that will really work with the kind of transition we are talking about.
Great, thanks, Pavan. I hear you talk about basically vision setting from government, right? And then letting market players come in and fill the gap. Give us an example of, you talked about incentives and what sort of business models. What is it that the government can do to really make sure that industry efforts, whether individually or in partnership mode, can really find and meet that outcome, which is around decarbonization and then agnostic of technologies?
I think one of them is like, I'll talk about 2-3 things. One is, can we really talk about, I don't want to use this word, but test beds maybe. Pilots, I think we all like to really talk about pilots all the time. But can there be test beds of testing different technologies and understanding their business models? Say, a scheme that is able to support anywhere close to 1,000 to 2,000 truck deployment in the next 2-3 years. I think that's one way to really, because then we'll clearly understand, okay, this is the unit economics. Unless the unit economics really works, we can't really upload, upfront expect that the whole capex will be borne by this individual truck owners. So that's going to be a challenge. So we'll need to address that. We have no choice in that. So I think clearly the government support can come there. The other support I would really say is platform like eFast, which Niti Aayog is leading, and almost 12 to 13 think tanks have come together along with 15 OEMs and LSPs to really say, let's do this honest conversation. I think we really need to talk about what are the challenges and how do we take an approach to address this. It's simply not saying, okay, we will just push down the policy and we'll give some incentive and we'll see the industry react. See, e-bus is a classic case. We have worked extensively on e-bus. What is the learning from e-bus? FAME 1. Many of them were on capex model, and many of the state transport undertakings were finding it so challenging to, really run those buses. What did we do? The business model tweak in FAME 2 to GCC, gross cost contract, where you said, okay, we will give 10 years to 12 years lease model and let's define the specification. That didn't work. Version 3, grand challenge was announced. You said, okay, top 9 cities apply, I'll keep smaller cities away, they can't afford the charging infrastructure. They got all the cities, 5 cities applied out of the 9 cities that were eligible. And 5,500 electric buses were aggregated, out of which I think 4,200 or something odd are eligible for under the FAME scheme. What did it result? 30% reduction in price points for these bigger cities, right? Whether that model will again apply for smaller cities, we don't know. But the question is, there is a discovery that is happening as we are talking about, from CAPEX to OPEX. Standardizing the specifications was one of the biggest things that has happened for the e-bus sector. And now you see, out of that, what has come? Payment security mechanisms. I'm drawing all these parallels because these are extremely applicable to the trucking industry. There was the new PM e-bus Seva scheme, which was launched on August 16th. The model again changed. They said we will give viability gap funding for OPEX model for running your buses for 10 years in 100 plus cities. Unbelievable shift, which has never happened in an e-bus, in a bus industry in our 76 years of independence. So this kind of shifts, so the policy has to be really, really agile, and it has to be iterative, because no one has that magic answer. If there was, we wouldn't be even discussing that. And last point, we need more of collaboration around with OEMs also in India. In Europe, they collaborate for putting, for example, the charging infrastructure, for developing fuel cell. And I'm pointing it out, taking care that I know Mr. Sundaresan is here. Why don't we see that? How do we bring at least the initial stack? If we start thinking of the technology as a stack module and approach, I think we can do wonders and, really help in shifting this industry.
Thanks. It'll be great to see what parallels we can draw and, really take the learnings through the iterations and the pain that we've already gone through in, one segment, and really apply it to this segment. And I'll let Mr. Sundaresan comment on the pilot and being part from OEM side. From that, I'm going to move to Shweta. And Shweta, I'd love to hear you talk about, really the importance of this segment, middle mile decarbonization and Amazon's overall plans. And what do you see taking shape over the next 5 years, and what's the roadmap ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Shubhra. Very good afternoon to everyone. I was listening to what you had to say, Pawan, and I found myself nodding because I think many of the things that you spoke about is absolutely what is happening. We're seeing pilots because no one really knows what technology is the right technology. It is an iterative process, so we're going along as we discover, and our findings inform our next steps. So yeah, I thought you made some really great points. I think when it comes to middle mile decarbonization, at least for an organization like Amazon, we run a very complex transportation network to get products all the way from our sellers, all the way down to our customers. And we have millions of sellers and we have millions of customers. So that complexity is tremendous. And to do that, we rely on multiple modes of transportation. We rely on air. We rely on rail. We believe it's a very important part of our network. We rely on trucks, vans, and bikes. Now, when you look at this combination of different transportation modes, the one that I would like to call out, where we're currently facing, I would say, where a lot of the effort is being focused on, is the trucking sector. We are looking at air. We don't really have very solid solves for air decarbonization. I think we have SAF, but still in early stages. For middle mile decarbonization, I think the biggest challenge there is the long haul distances, and to have solutions that can address running that long distance is something that we're currently exploring. We announced our partnership we've got partnerships with a lot of OEMs. Our latest partnership announcement is with iSure, where we're looking at scaling our middle mile electric trucks over the next couple of years. And to Pawan's point, that is the iterative process that we're engaging in as well. So as you can see, there are a bunch of different modes of transport that we leverage. Now, the way that we address some of the challenges, and I talked about the long haul distance challenge, we're doing that in a number of ways. We're looking at improving fleet efficiency. We're looking at deploying electric trucks. I just talked about it. We're also looking at low carbon fuels, because we know that that's the interim solution when we still don't have cost parity on some of the electrification solutions that are out there. And I think an underlying lever that we also strongly believe in is partnerships. I talked about our recent partnership, but I think the partnerships form the bedrock of much of the work. Pawan, you also alluded to that in terms of collaboration. We've got partnerships going on with almost all the leading OEMs in the country. So a combination of all these things is what we're leveraging at Amazon. And again, I think we need to iteratively find solutions to each of those problems, and we work with the government as well. So we're proud partners of the Shunya campaign, which aims to make last mile delivery zero emissions. So multiple partnerships like that is what we're relying on, and we're working on the middle mile piece.
Thanks. Shweta, I just want to see if you can quickly expound on, you talk about the alternate fuels. I just have a very specific question there. How do you see the carbon reduction benefits and the potential from these fuels, especially when we're talking about moving to zero emission vehicles?
Thanks, Shubhra. So when we look at the low carbon fuels, and we're working on a bunch of different fuels. We've got renewable diesel, there is compressed biogas, compressed hydrogen as well. So we've got a bunch of different things. And we know with the studies that are out there that there is a significant carbon reduction impact on all of those. And I talked about how electrification has its challenges, and in the interim, because we have stringent decarbonization commitments and we want to get ahead on those, deploying these kind of technologies is important. I'd like to talk about some of the work that we've done on this. So we have, for those who may not know, we have something called the Climate Pledge Fund. It's a $2 billion investment fund where we invest in early stage companies that innovate products, services, and solutions that help us in the decarbonization journey. So we've invested in companies in the US and in Europe, electrolyzer companies that help produce green hydrogen. We've also made an investment in a company called Infinium, which is a low electrocarbon fuel producer. So it's looking around the corners, identifying solutions, finding companies that are investing in these kind of technologies that we are looking at getting involved in.
Thanks, exciting work, and I'm so glad to be part of everything we are doing there, right? From there, I'm going to move to, actually, I will, also welcome Mr. Sanjay Gupta from IOCL. And I can, if I'm going to pose that question, I have a question. I have actually a similar question for both Mr. Sanjeev Gupta and Mr. Pramod Kumar from HPCL. On, given that we are seeing increasingly the decarbonization imperatives for the transportation sector, how do you see the market shift happening? And do you have plans specifically on bringing in low carbon alternate fuels? What sort of work, innovation, R&D are we seeing at your two great organizations? So, sounds good. Here you go.
Okay, thank you, Surabhi. And first of all, thank to CI for bringing the OMC into this platform and putting our views into this decarbonization. So I come from HPCL R&D Center, and I'll put forward what HPCL is doing in the area of decarbonization. So if you see, like, we were into the area of more carbon-based fuel. Now in the decarbonization, the first step we move towards is to go towards the gas-based system. And we have put up, very recently we commissioned a CBG plant in Badayun. And our mandate is to put more of a gases into the system, which is a low carbon. That's the number one. And in terms of the hydrogen, we are the first, I think, PSU who is setting up a 370 tons per annum electrolyzer in our Vizag refinery, which is going to be commissioned and starting from December 23. That's the first bold step we have taken up, though using the technologies of others. That's the second one. In terms of the research and all, we have our own developed technology wherein we produce from the methane a HCNG, which we believe it's a low-hanging fruit, because you don't have to, this process doesn't emit any CO2 from the process. You take the methane molecule, convert the methane molecule into HCNG, and whatever carbon, you produce the carbon nanotube. That's the another value-added product. And this process doesn't require any water. So it's a CO2 free, no water. So we believe that's the sustainable solution. And we have demonstrated this technology at a TRL 7 level. And we are going to implement bigger plants, 2-3 plants is going to come up in another 1 to 2 years. So that could be another one game-changing technology. And to use this SCNG, the cost will be similar to CNG. And there is no requirement of any infrastructure. Whatever the CNG infra is there, the same can be used for dispensing that. And we feel like that can be adopted by the hard to decarbonize, I think, truck sectors also. Because the CNG trucks can use this SCNG technology also. And would be willing to partner who are trying to use this technology. That's the one. In terms of the green hydrogen, we are working into various aspects. One is the material development. We have our own R&D, and very recently we have started a hydrogen lab, which is focusing on the electrolyzer as well as the various materials. And we developed one capacitor based on the refinery materials. We have the delayed coker technology in our refinery. From the delayed coker coke, we could develop the electrolyzer. And that we demonstrated at a reasonably little bigger scale. The another we see, like all we are talking about the batteries and all, there again we have to depend on the lithium where we have a less availability in the country. So we are also working into different chemistries like sodium and all. And for stationary application, we are also working on the vanadium. And vanadium can be we can get it from the refinery catalyst and the streams. So these are the few things we are looking into the decarbonization. Other than that, we are also looking into biomass pyrolysis routes to produce the biofuel. So that also we are trying to see if we can produce the biofuel that can be co-processed into the refineries. So that's the another aspect we are trying to look which can decarbonize these sectors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjeev.
So if I look at it from oil companies' perspective, probably much before energy transition or decarbonization, what comes, which last 2 years globally people are facing is the energy security. So I was asking a German guy we are working with, he said we never knew there can be energy shortage. In India, a growing country, first and foremost point we want is the energy. So from 3 perspectives, I'll share my point of view. One will be energy security. Second will be then energy transition towards decarbonization. And third will be importance of strategic alliances, which are now becoming even more relevant. So from first perspective as an Indian oil, as well as the oil industry, one, all of us are now migrating from a oil to gas to now energy company. All of us, all 3 oil companies for the matter, including private sector. Government of India is realizing that India is going to grow 6.5, even more. And first thing, India can ill afford, there is no energy. Instead of, irrespective of any color, be it coal, be it nuclear, differences. Developed countries is one energy replacing another one. In India, there is a scope for everyone. So no energy is replacing another one because we need energy. And we need much more because in all respect, most of it we are dependent on the import. Oil, we are dependent on import, so is gas, so is for that matter battery, and so is the electrolyzer. Everywhere we are dependent on the import part. So oil companies are investing heavily into oil and gas infrastructure, including refinery capacity. India is one of the few countries which is still investing in refining capacity, knowing fully well that for decades to come we need oil and gas. But notwithstanding this, India is also aware about the energy transition and decarbonization. From that perspective, as from Indian perspective, I'll share, we are taking a multi-pronged approach. We are the first company who invested in a company by the call LanzaTech. So LanzaTech is a strategic alliance. Why it's becoming very important? Because one thing we all are realizing, all the brightest brain are not a hegemony of a one company. A lot of people are working globally and we need to tie up with them. We can't afford to do all the research in-house. In-house research is important, but external types are very important. So a couple of years back, we invested in a company which converts carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen through microbes into ethanol. So that was the starting point. Why that was very important in a public sector setting. Investing in a startup, which is also a global startup, was unthinkable. And we jokingly say that in oil companies, a 20 million investment, it takes 2 minutes to approve, which is not a small amount, but it's still a very small amount because every year we do almost $5 to $6 billion investment. But our board took 2 hours to discuss this investment because the first time we were making foray. Parallelly, what we started doing, we started understanding that nobody knows actually what direction energy transition will take place. And whether it will be hydrogen, battery, biofuels, everything would have its own space. So we started making multi-pronged approach. After LanzaTech, we invested in a company which is called Phi Energy, which is into aluminum air battery technology. We realized that lithium is not abundantly available in India. And lithium also has certain challenges when it comes to the temperature range in which it operates. So we invested in this company and we formed a joint venture in India. And we are working with a couple of auto OEs as well as for backup power. And that is the second thing we felt that we need to be into battery technology. Third thing we realized that both to support government as well as the infrastructure when it comes to charging will be very important. But there were 2 approaches in that. We also realized that our petrol pumps, though put together 3 oil companies have more than 1 lakh of petrol pump, and that's a very important realty space which is required for any kind of transitioning journey. But we also realized that charging on our petrol pump would not be simple because we don't have enough space. And because oil is going to remain a predominant dispensation from petrol pump, we need something which is almost equivalent to oil. And that's where Indian Oil started working on battery swapping. And recently we announced that we are forming a joint venture with a company called Sun Mobility, intends to invest somewhere around $500 million in the next couple of years. So we realize that 2 and 3 wheeler will be very important. The first one to migrate to energy transition to e-mobility. Fourth thing we started doing is hydrogen, because we realize the hard-to-abate sector as well as industry will be very important. And Indian Oil is in the process of forming a joint venture with L&T and Renew Power, because renewable power is 70% of green hydrogen, and then comes the electrolyzer. So that's another strategic alliance. Why all these are very important? Because what we felt as part of Indian Oil that nobody can time when e-mobility is going to become very big. Nobody can time when hydrogen is going to become very big. What we realized that what is really required right now is right relationships and experience of our manpower. What is only left in the whole game is the scaling it up. For scaling it up, probably Indian Oil is a large company to scale up anything very fast. So what our company is doing, we are making foray everywhere. We are learning, we are building relationships. And we realize that the day it needs to be scaled it up, we can always do that. We have managerial bandwidth, we have deep pockets, we can do that. So from that perspective, we are making foray everywhere. And whichever line needs to be scaled up and whenever required is scaled up, we would be able to do so.
Fantastic, thank you. I mean, some of the things that really resonate are the fact that we are balancing developmental priorities and, sustainability priorities, which is very unique for us. But it's so heartening to hear that, two of the, organizations like yours, which will really be the ones who can transform India, are, you have the vision and the strategy in place and the funding when it comes to that, to be able to really quickly put your weight behind solutions when they get ready to scale up. And
I can only add one thing. Morning I was having a session with someone. I said India's scope 3 is 85% us. So unless we are not big into this game,
exactly,
whatever India might decide, not much can be achieved unless oil
yes,
companies are not into this game very
yes,
seriously.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to just, I do want to touch upon, but I'm mindful of the time. So if I can just have you comment, maybe take a minute each. When we say green hydrogen, the focus on that is about manufacturing, becoming a manufacturer and exporter of green hydrogen, which I think also goes towards our energy security issues. So just, your thoughts on what is the potential for the trucking industry, and when do you see, if you have a crystal ball, of something, of this becoming a solution that is a real, option in this space?
One is, as I said, that nobody can time it. It's very difficult to time. So someone can say that $1 will be achieved in 10 years. There are a lot of people equally saying it will not be achieved in 10 years. Difficult to say so. But what we can say that, particularly in freight, which we are discussing today, there will be a lot of overlaps. So there is very clearly defined two-wheeler, three-wheeler anyhow, very clearly is the e-mobility. Nobody is questioning that. Four-wheeler will be part, e-mobility part can be hydrogen. But when it comes to heavy trucking, both models are possible. Today a lot of people are working, the way we are developing oil companies, the charging infrastructure, there are always possibility that even trucking can also be on e-mobility. May not be really heavy trucks, but small and mid can be comfortably. So saying today probably that is going to happen in 2 years, 3 years, difficult to say. But people are working. Hopefully by 2030 things will be far more clearer and far more tangible.
Great, thank you. With that, I'm going to move to request Mr. V. Raghavan to really talk about your experience with alternate fuels and how do you see them, what role they can play as we move towards a lower carbon transportation regime.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting insights, Sanjeev sir. I think the topic about decarbonizing freight, I think it's a very interesting one because from my point of view, we make alternate fuels. From my point of view, it's probably the thing that's going to get decarbonized at the end. Because let's face it, the internal combustion engine is a marvelous piece of equipment. Huh? It's not something that someone's going to replace in a jiffy. It's not going to happen in 10 years, in my opinion. and probably not even going to happen in 20 years. I mean, we're not going to be able to transition into something that can completely replace an IC engine, especially in the trucking area, the large haul trucking area, the huge earth-moving equipment and so on. So those are not going to be replaced by any alternate energy very soon. We at Green Jewels, we manufacture a diesel-like fuel from agro waste. And in a sense, we probably are the only ones to do so. We make a diesel-like fuel itself. The reason why we think that's important is because in the journey of 1,000 miles, the first step is probably in this area of decarbonization, the use of biofuels. Now, we have not had very good experience with biofuels so far. We've used biodiesel for the last 7 or 8 years. Most of the biodiesel was made from vegetable oils. And we all know there isn't enough surplus vegetable oil in the world. So to be able to use vegetable oils and divert them to energy applications would have been very, very difficult. And it's not going to happen. What I'm going to say is a little bit controversial. You know, a lot of efforts today by industry, for example, is in using biomass in their industrial applications, in boilers and you know, heat applications and so on. And if biofuels, liquid biofuels, high energy density biofuels are the first step in this continuum of decarbonization, the IC engine, as I said, is a very important component, and the biofuel needs to feed into that IC engine. If vegetable oils are not the source, because I'll tell you what the real problem is. To be able to take a biomass like rice husk, for example, which has a low energy density, and convert it to diesel, which has a very high energy density, that technology gap is not something we are able to bridge today. I spoke to Dr. Pramod, and I mean, they are obviously doing a lot of work, but that's not something that's easily done commercially. Yeah? In India, we are also wanting our fuels to be cheaper while they are getting better, right? That's something that we have seen as a company. The point I'm trying to make is, if you are going to use biofuels, then a lot of technology development has to be to convert the existing biomass available in the country into high energy density fuels like gasoline and diesel. If you divert biomass into heat applications, which we are doing today, which is very easy, we just burn it instead of coal, people are happy, and a lot of, in my opinion, research is not going into conversion. Okay? So this is an area where we have taken a first step. We are seeing some traction with large companies, obviously ones that have carbon footprint mandates right at the board levels. It's scalable, but obviously biofuels from biomass are not going to replace diesel anytime very soon.
You talked about
I don't
scalability.
want to sound gloomy about this, but I think we've got to be realistic about what we're talking about.
So you talk about the scalability, and that is what I wanted to touch on. Are we ready? Do you think that the current ecosystem is ready? If you look at the supply, the source, rather the supply, the distribution infrastructure, what kind of standardization and even definition of what are some of these alternate fuels? Are we ready to deploy these solutions?
I think I would say that kind of reverse that question. Okay, I think the way we are developing biofuels today is to be able to plug and play into the existing infrastructure, to be able to plug and play into the existing trucking system. I mean, I'm not talking about green hydrogen. I'm talking about a biofuel that can just be dropped in and replace diesel, for example. That's what we do. There's a biofuel policy, very articulate one. But I think the things that I would like to see change is that I would like to see some notifications around new fuels, and those are things that are taking time. So for example, on the diesel side, there's today specification only for biodiesel, whereas in other countries like Europe and the US and other places, you have drop-in fuels that are second generation and third generation come over already. So those kind of things India needs to catch up on. In terms of, look, the infrastructure to be able to, supply biofuels, I think today they are in the realm of B2B. Really, and the policy also talks about only B2B kind of a business. So we supply, for example, to large companies, to other companies. We don't supply to, at a retail level. We would like to work with IOCL and HPCL to see how we can plug into the, into their blending programs. But those again need new notifications for the new fuels that people like us are developing. So that's work in process. That's something I think that we are trying to influence and get done as quickly as possible.
Great, thank you, Mr. V. Raghavan. And with that, I want to now move to Mr. Sundaresan, and I purposely wanted to come to you last, Mr. Sundaresan, once we have discussed, all the different options and, what is possible. You actually have products that you've already showcased across, most of that spectrum of fuel cell EV, hydrogen fuel vehicles, running on liquefied natural gas, CNG, everything. So what is your experience on the different vehicles? And more importantly, their stage of commercial deployment?
Thanks, Shubhra. You heard from various speakers. So as Pawan explained, there are lots of options, and it is difficult for an OEM now because where do you put your energy? Where do you put your money? Where do you put your effort? So we recognize two clear time frames. So one is the near near to midterm kind of, where there will be a lot of transition technologies. So the messy middle, somebody in US has coined this term. And earlier it was supposed to last till 2030, now it has got extended till 2040. So in this period, there are going to be a lot of technologies. But mainly if we see, one is IC engine based, where the fuel can be liquid, gaseous, biofuel, blends, all that. So there we have a lot of experience. We design and manufacture our own engines. So that has given us a good insight into what is necessary to make a internal combustion engine work for any fuel. We have pretty much tried all the blends, pure methanol, and now I hear that we are trying out that biodiesel also. And in all this, we see that it probably requires, and it has gone to the extent that even hydrogen internal combustion engine, we are among the world's leading players who have been able to demonstrate a H2 internal combustion engine on the road. We have clocked close to, I think, 10,000 kilometers already with one of the partners. So as far as engine technology is concerned, we are a lot more confident that whichever way the market goes, we will be able to quickly adapt. Of course, there are challenges. Durability is a big challenge. It might work for 1 year, but will it continue working for 6 years, 7 years, the way the current diesel engine works? So some of these engines are in that kind of durability testing that is happening. We do recognize certain developments that, so changes that have to happen. We work with our tier ones and other vendors in order to make that happen. But I think that is manageable. And for customers also, not just customers, overall ecosystem, it is more manageable. Because they are more or less, if not drop-in, very close to drop-in replacements. So you can reuse a lot of infrastructure. The service network, they can manage. They know what a internal combustion engine is. They can very quickly adapt. So I think the challenge there is very limited. So that's manageable. But when we come to the long term, we clearly see electric vehicles as a technology that will be there. Of course, for long haul, it is going to be a challenge with today's technology. Maybe battery density, if it improves, if there are some as of now, again, there is really nothing on the horizon, but maybe something will come up. When that happens, for the long haul also, electric vehicles can be a choice. But even from today, electric vehicles, small portions of the fleet can become electric vehicle. So obviously the middle mile, if it is 200, 250 kilometers, it can become electrified today. And hopefully the learnings from there will take us to extend that further and further. But even for the 250 kilometers, it is not a drop-in replacement, because you need the infrastructure, you need the charging infrastructure. And in EV, there are other options. So one is the fixed battery, the other is the swappable battery. It can work even for trucks. But that also requires ecosystem. You need to have those batteries available at a much, see for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, you don't expect the vehicle to go beyond, let's say 50-kilometer radius. So as long as you set up your network within that, you can cover that, but not so for trucks. Even a middle mile truck, though it might be running for 6 days a week between on that route, on the 7th day, in order to make more money, it goes out of that defined network. And you can't deny that freedom or that flexibility if that is not there, and that can very severely disrupt the economics. So given that for swap battery to take off, you need again a much wider spread for trucks. But then there is also talk of e-highways, electrified highways where you have the catenary or charging on the road. So those technologies are there, and it is again, while as an OEM we can do a very small experiment, technology per se, again, there is not much of a challenge. It is proven, it can make it work. But you need the overall ecosystem to develop and make that happen. That's something we are working on. We are working with partners in these cases, the fleet operators and then the end customers. Some changes have to be made in terms of the way you operate the truck in. So you need a lot more upfront visibility. You can't say, okay, today morning I need a truck, can it come now in the next 1 hour? That cannot happen. So we need slightly more predictable schedules. So we are working with people to try out even these technologies. Then the other one for the long haul, today the solution appears to be hydrogen fuel cell. Now, there are a lot more challenges there as compared to electric vehicles, because first of all, hydrogen distribution. Hydrogen generation is a challenge, then distribution is a challenge, and then the cost is a challenge. But still, from the consensus is that that's the long-term solution. So we are working on that, again with partners. So we have a few fuel cell trucks running already on the road, and few more fuel cell buses will come. Actually, there was a news report a couple of days ago that our buses started running in Leh. Yeah. So we will have a few more buses running and few more trucks also, fuel cell trucks. But these are pilots. These are very small pilots, given all the other challenges. But that is giving us learning, not just to us as an OEM, but to everybody else. Lot more challenges, but lot more learnings also. But again, as Pawan mentioned, that iterative thing, business model one side, technical thing in terms of how do you get the supply chain across, all that. So I hope, yeah.
Great. I just was reminded we have very limited time and I want to have at least 2 questions in. So just, if I can ask you to take just a minute to talk about what is the government support? We saw FAME 2 driving electric vehicle adoption. What is needed for similar uptake in this segment? But limiting you, sorry, to just a minute.
Sure. So any of the mechanisms that Pawan mentioned, Wilma, upfront subsidy or some kind of a viability gap funding or even some kind of a guarantee to the financier who is lending to the customer for buying a truck, which is costing almost 3 times to 5 times. So if any of these from the government will help in faster adoption.
Great, thank you. And with that, I'll open up for questions, but I'm going to limit it to maybe just 2 or 3 questions. I see someone at the back there, please, if you can have a mic. There's a hand raised at that table there. Sir, if you can address who in the panel your question is posed to.
Most likely the question is to the OEM. I heard continuously everybody saying that long haul is a problem. Why can't we think of an alternative where we already have such a strong railway network? Why can't we just take the railway network on rent and there can be private operated trains running for taking care of the long haul?
Yeah, that is already there. In fact, you have the roll-on, roll-off. So the truck as such can get onto a railway carriage. So that is already being tried out. But all said and done, I mean, government is encouraging or investing in freight corridors. So that is definitely an option. Waterways is also an option. But again, they cannot cover 100%. So you will still have some long haul applications which are purely on road.
Yes, the question on this table.
Yeah, hi, I'm Vikas. I'm the co-founder of the company SpockTech Green Ventures. So my question is to Mr. Sanjeev. You mentioned about the swapping technology and you are doing a joint venture with one of the company. So what we understand is that, standardization of the battery is very, very critical in order to get success for the swapping of, the batteries. And there was a draft, the policy with respect to standardization. And after that, I don't think that, the final policy is out. So most of the OEMs today, they come up with their own battery technologies, like different sizes of the batteries, different capacity of the batteries. So how do you kind of, tackle that particular challenge when you want to kind of grow into this battery swapping related, the alternatives?
I think it's a very good question because there is a lot of debate on this issue. There's one side which wants standardization and interoperability. The other side says because it's not like a LPG cylinder where gas is same, because there are different technologies, and because there are different technologies, probably form factor alone cannot take care of that. So that's why you'll find a large chunk, despite policy being there, draft policy of Niti Aayog, it still hasn't come to any kind of convergence. I don't have a very easy answer to it, but what I can say that first and foremost, safety would be paramount, whatever mechanism comes. That government is also very clear. Number two would be that couple of auto OEs have come up with their own battery swapping solution, but they are also realizing that one auto OE solution, other auto is not going to use it. So that's where some of the companies which are neutral in terms of auto OEs have much more acceptance, because if auto OE itself has a solution, one auto OE, another is never going to buy that. What we can only simply say that couple of people would come around, may not be exactly a same form factor, but will largely about chemistry, about density. So some solution will emerge eventually. One, of course, thinking is going on that outside cascade can be of one size and internally which can accommodate different batteries. But right now there is no easy and clear solution. Very difficult to say how it's going to emerge. Some people say that big companies would become de facto the standardization, which may or may not come true.
Great. So with that, I am going to thank all my panelists here, and just some of the messages, really good messages and very heartening messages is I hear, so I have the oil PSUs both talking about. Yes, of course. Before I close, one statement from Dr. Pramod Kumar.
See, we are all talking about hydrogen, but probably if you see this hydrogen was operated in the refineries in a very confined and safe zone. We are bringing hydrogen to the public. So awareness of the safety also has to be taken care because it is going to the public. That's what
Thanks. Extremely important aspect as we start, the whole retail use and mainstreaming it. So what I hear is that, there is a lot of innovation in the works across, the entire spectrum, and that's great to hear. I think the really big question is about signaling and intent and the bold vision and who is going to lay that out. And really, I think the intent to work towards this is very clear, and it seems that there are already working prototypes in place. It's about now bringing and having more of these conversations, bringing the partnerships that everyone, all the speakers today spoke about, mainstreaming those, and really, transforming this sector. But also all the difficult questions that everyone also brought to fore. I think the hard to abate tag for this sector is is well earned, and we have our jobs cut out for ourselves, and we really need to come together across different parts of the industry. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the guests here for your patient participation and the questions, and thank you once again to all the speakers, the esteemed speakers here.
Ladies and gentlemen, with this we end our session. I thank our distinguished guests for the insightful discussion. I request all the panelists to join for a group photograph, please.